Hey, how are you doing? In this tutorial, I would like to walk you through the process of creating these glossy lips with lots of glitters. And I'm guessing the level is about intermediate to advanced. And during this tutorial, I will be using the makeup brushes. And yeah, I'll just use a bunch of them, show you how you can use them for your portrait paintings when creating makeup. But first, I would like to make a sketch. Let me go to my sketch brushes. I'll use the chalk pencil and I'll pick a grayish color. I have added the reference photo that I'm using. I've added that to the post so you can download it or you can follow the link to Pinterest. I found the photo on Pinterest. You can find lots of makeup related photos there, glossy lips, lots of glittery stuff if you want to practice more. But now let me just get started. I have created a canvas that is 3000 by 4000 pixels and I'm working in portrait mode. But of course you can also make a square canvas of 3000 by 3000 or 3.5 or 4000 pixels, whatever. Or you can make a landscape style canvas, which would be 4000 by 3000. But I just like it this way. It's easier to video edit this for me, and I also like it because, well, I can make a Pinterest video of it, for instance. So I'm killing two birds with just one stone. Let me get started with sketching. First, I'm going to look at the overall shape of the mouth, which is kind of like a big circle or oval. I'll make it nice and big. It's like an oval shape, and here at the top we have that little indent where you have like that. Oh, I call it a snot gutter. I don't think that's the official name. And then here below halfway we have the corners of the mouth, indicating these like this, just as a reference point for myself. And that lower lip, it takes up less space than that upper part with the teeth and the opening of the mouth. So I'm trying to measure that. And if you are having trouble with sketching, then I'd advise to follow the whole sketching course that I'm working on here at Patreon. Just launched the first class. And in the next class, we will be discussing measuring in sketching. But you can also check one of my older videos about sketching. That can also be helpful. I'm looking at that opening of the mouth here. That angle of the lip. It's a bit like this. I'm just trying to look at how much space everything is taking up. We have that upper lip. And it's a bit curved. If you imagine the volume of the lip, then it will curve a bit like this. And you don't have to match your sketch exactly to your reference. We just want to create shiny, glossy lips here. And the teeth, well, they're about halfway of that opening in the mouth. And we can see a little bit of the teeth right next to it. if you look at the curves here in that lower lip, then they would be a bit like this. The curve, that volume of the lower lip. If you would think of it as a 3D shape, this is what it will look like. And of course, at this point, you could lower the opacity of this sketch and make a more refined sketch on top. But since these lips, they are it's a pretty easy shape, pretty basic shape, I'll just keep it like this and get started painting right away. So let me go to the layer menu and let me duplicate this layer. I just want to save sketch. I'll call it step 1. You don't have to do this. This is just so I can save the process for you. Let me make a new layer. I'll call this one sketch. And I'll group these two because this will be step number 2. All you need to do is create a new layer and drag it underneath your sketch layer. And that's where we will start painting. First thing I'll do is add a base color. And let's just try and guess what that base color should be. I want it to be a warm color. And I will create a color palette. I will drop in colors here. But I would really advise you to also just try and grab your own colors. I'm going to drag it on. I feel like this is a little bit too warm. I'm going towards the yellows a bit more, towards the oranges. I think, well, this is close. I just want a little bit warmer maybe. Yeah, I'll go for this. I'll drop it in the color palette so you can find it. But like I said, it's good to practice yourself. Practice grabbing colors. And now I'm going to grab a color for the lips. It's a bit pinkish, perhaps something like this. And I am going to work on just one layer. I'm just going to use layer 3. I'll drop everything on one layer because that enables me to blend colors using the smudge tool. I'm going to start off with the basic set with the basic brushes. I'll use the basic flow brush to drop in some base colors here. The opacity of the brush is at 100% and the size is at, well, let's go for 70%. And I'm just going to drop in color, and as long as you don't lift your pen, it will be the same opacity. And once you lift your pen, your paint will get recharged and you will be able to make a more opaque area stroke. Like this, it's becoming more opaque. And it doesn't matter if it's messy. We just want to lay down that base for our painting. So I'm just filling that shape of those lips. I can actually go over this area as well, whatever. We'll get there later. So I'm really not looking at the messiness. I just want a base of pinkish, reddish colors. And we can actually also add a little bit of a darker tone just underneath there. Oh, I forgot to put that lip. Oh, but I need that lip color. There, that's better. Let me put that in. And I want a little bit of a darker color just underneath that lip. And let me also lower the opacity of the sketch a bit. Around 46%. Darken this area just a little bit. And these corners, I want to go even darker and warmer. Because there underneath there will be a little bit of a shadow because the light is coming mainly from the top. Darkening this a little bit as well. It's like a studio light setting. But underneath those lips, you often see a little bit of a shadow. And also, I just want a little bit of color variation on that skin around the lips. Now let me make this area a lot darker. I'll drop this in. I'll go for a very dark red and drop that in here. And it doesn't have to be completely dark yet. We can work on that later. But we do want that base. Still just want to work very messy here at the start. Darken those corners just a little bit. And then those teeth. Let me drop this in. For the teeth, just be sure that you don't pick white. It's a common mistake, and teeth, they definitely won't look very white. I'm going for a grayish color first, which might seem pretty dark when you look at it in the color wheel, but it's really better to start a bit dark and only in the end add lighter colors. I feel like this is actually even a bit too light. Going darker. Something like this. I'm making the brush a little bit smaller. I'm at 44%. And I'll just choose this gray to block in the lips. Let me drop it in. Now I want to add some more reddish, deeper reds for those lips. For instance, here underneath, that's pretty saturated. Still just blocking in, just a base. You don't have to get the colors correct right away. I always like just starting out with something, and then you can tweak it and work towards that color that you need. Because it's easier to compare colors than to pick the right color straight away. Now I can see that this, for instance, it's still too light. I can go darker, more saturated. Perhaps something like this. For instance, for here at the top. It's a pretty deep red. Here on this side as well. Focusing on those dark areas that I'm seeing. Let me make the brush bigger again, 73%. I think we got a nice base here. Let me duplicate this group before we get on to the next step. I'll duplicate it, call this 3, and now I'll go back to that layer 3 and I'll use the smudge tool. I'll set it to the basic blender and let's just smudge everything a little bit. Let's blend these colors, make everything a little bit softer. The size is at 30% by the way, and the opacity is at 35. And let's also lower the opacity of the sketch a little bit more. 20% right now. So we can clearly see those edges and how much we need to blend them. I can't wait till we get to the sparkles. That shine, that's so much fun to add. But for now, just softening this. Got a little hair here on my screen. Well, it's not really a hair, it's like a, I don't know, perhaps it's from my clothes. Going over these edges, not blending those too much. So to drag colors onto other areas, you can drag them like this, but if I just want to create a softer edge, I'll go over the edge like this instead of, well, this way. Hope I'm making sense here. So here I can drag that pink on top of that dark area a little bit, where I want to lighten it. Remember, it took a long time for me to get used to blending in Procreate. Actually, I've been working in Photoshop for such a long time, over 10 years before I switched to Procreate, and I always used the eyedropper tool back then to blend, picking up local colors and then with a low opacity going over the area to blend, which is well, it's very different from the way I'm blending right now with the smudge tool. Even though using the basic flow brush, because it's a low opacity brush, it still works a bit the same as using the eyedropper tool. If you use colors, values that are close together, you get that blended look. Blending the skin area a little bit. This corner here, of course. I think this is looking nice. Let me check the difference. The blended look versus the non-blended look. You see, it's looking a lot more like blurry version. And now we can start refining it more. And to refine it, I'm going to start using a combination of the darken line, the basic flow brush, and the blender. I'll start by dropping in this color that I forgot. I'll start by using the darken line brush. And for instance, I'll clean up that inside of the lips. I've picked up that local color. And the brush is at 12% by the way. 35% opacity. And I'll just go over this edge. I'm like cleaning it up. You can see a distinction, a clear edge between the lips and that very dark area. So we want to get that. You see soft transitions on the lips wherever there are no sparkles, because those have really sharp edges. But you have soft transitions in the skin and in the lip color. But here between that dark area and the lips itself, you can see a pretty clear distinction. So as always, take a good look at the edges. Make sure you don't make everything look very fuzzy. Darkening this corner. And also that distinction between the teeth and the dark area. That's also very crisp. Teeth would look very weird if they'd have fuzzy, soft edges. So with teeth, it's important to not make them white, not make them too light, and get that clear distinction between that dark area and the teeth. And then it really doesn't matter if the shape isn't exactly like in the reference image, but it'll look like teeth. Oh, going over the edge a little bit. I'm going to darken this up. Just going over that area because it's really the dark hole, that mouth. I'm just going to color it in. Oh, I messed up a little bit. Going too fast. So you got that entire area. And then of course you can switch to that blending brush, to that smudge tool. And for instance here, it's a little bit more fuzzy. You can blend that a little bit. And here as well, you can drag that darkness onto the teeth. And here it's a little bit more fuzzy as well. And sometimes you can just go over it multiple times, slowly refining that edge. I also want to refine that edge here at the lips, between the lips and the teeth. And to do that, I'll just pick up a local color again, the reddish color this time. And I'll go over that area. Because here we can also see a pretty crisp edge. Darkening this up a little bit. Then I can just use the smudge tool, make it a little bit smaller, 13%. To smudge it just a little bit. Now let me do the same for this top part. Oh, let me switch to the darken line brush again. Let me do the same for this top part here. Because I feel that it's pretty dark there. Then back to the smudge tool to soften it a little bit. Now I want to work on the teeth. I'll grab that local color and I want that little line between the teeth. And it should be very subtle. Let me turn off the sketch actually, so I can clearly see it. I'll start like this, darkening some areas like here. That's a little bit darker. And here in this corner. I'll darken it a little bit and then I'll grab the smudge tool to soften that. Now that we got these edges, I want to go back to the basic flow brush because all the other edges, they are pretty soft, and with the basic flow brush I can also create pretty crisp edges as long as the brush is pretty small. First I'm going to grab this dark color again. I'm making the brush smaller. I'm at 27%. I want to darken this a little bit more. And here I want to lighten that area a little bit. Also see some more pinkish colors there. So let me grab that. On this side as well. And here I want to darken it. So I'll grab that local color that I created using the darken line brush. Now I can start refining those lips a little bit. I want to go a bit more saturated. Perhaps something like this. And I'll make some of these like lines, these creases going up. And since we are going to put a lot of glitter on here, you don't have to worry too much about all these details. You just want some basic texture. Some lip texture, some of these lines, which will shine through that glimmer and glitter. Everything is a little bit lighter here, but I'll still add some of these lines. Here at the top, I feel like it's a bit orangey. Perhaps something like this. Let me refine that top part a little. And here, that bottom, just working all over a little bit. So I'm really using the basic brush set to really get that base of the lips, and I'll only switch to the makeup brushes later in the painting stage. We use it to add that shine and that glimmer. Let me grab that dark color again. And you can see that I'm following that 3D shape of the lips. So here I'm making these curves that follow that shape of the lips. Adding that texture, those creases. Here we'll go straight down with those lines. And then as we move towards the right side here, we'll make these curves, following that 3D shape that I showed in the beginning in a sketch. Here on this side and also on this side, it's pretty dark. just grab that very dark color. I want to darken this crease a little bit. On this side as well. And I'll grab the smudge tool again to soften some areas a little bit, like here. Let me make the brush a bit bigger, 24%. It's starting to look good. Let's see the difference. There we had those base colors. And now we are really starting to refine the lips. Let's duplicate this layer and go to step 4. Oh, no, that's not 4. I need to type 4. All right, let's refine everything more. I'm going to turn down or remove the sketch. And let's refine it more. Let's work on the teeth, for instance, first. I'll still be using the basic flow brush. Here we got the teeth color. Let's go lighter. Now let's just add some light. Let me go a bit bigger, 37%. I'll gently lighten the teeth up. But I'll leave that top part, I'll leave that darker. There will be more shadow there. Because it's covered by those top lips. Go smaller, 15%. I can see a little light edge here. And of course we got some highlights. Let me drop this in. Let me go even lighter. And smaller with the brush, 9% right now. With a little light here, highlight. And some light on the teeth here. And I'll lighten that edge a little bit. Now I want to switch to the multiply brush. Did I drop in the color? No, I didn't. I'm switching to the multiply brush. I'm going to pick a local color here. Let me drop it in. And I'll make the brush pretty small, perhaps 4%. Yeah. And I want to darken some areas, like here for instance. I want to darken that area up. And the multiply brush allows you to do that without ruining any texture that you have created. So it'll just darken this area. And we'll still see those lines that we created. Make this a little bit darker as well. So we can just tweak the shadow areas a little bit to darken this. We can make this a little bit darker. We can also pick a local warm color for some more reddish shadows. I just want to switch to the darken line brush to clean this edge up a little bit. I feel like I could use some cleaning. want to get rid of that light looking line. And in case you want to spice up the colors a little bit, you can of course use the overlay brush. And for instance, grab a pinkish color. Let's grab this. Let me check. 20%. Opacity at 20. And you can just go over and spice up the colors a little bit. It also unifies the colors some more. Now let's start adding some glitter. Let's go to the makeup brushes. And let's use the sparkly glitters. And let me just duplicate this layer just to be sure. In case we do anything we didn't want to. And let me check. I'm at 50%. And let's grab a lighter color. Let's grab a very light pink to add some first glitters. And some here at the bottom. Let me drop it in. Let's go even lighter and a bit goldish. I'll make the brush bigger, 100%. That's maybe a bit too big. 81. You know what? I'm going to use a layer mask later on, so we can decide where we want the glitters to be. Let's also grab the colorful glitter. It's at, well, let's go for 33%. Opacity is at 98. Let's add some more glitter. Go even bigger, 59. Let's just add a variety of glitter here. I'll go smaller again, 21. To add some more here. Alright, I think we have enough glitter here. What we can do now is add a layer mask to this layer. We'll click the layer, click mask, and then drag pure black onto the layer mask. And now all the glitters are gone. Now we can go to that layer mask and then paint the glitters back in using white. Let's just use the basic flow brush for that. We can pick pure black. We can pick pure white by double tapping here. And now let's just make the brush a bit bigger, 56. And let's just add in some glitter. Now we have way more control. The glitter won't add up, won't end up in the darker areas. They'll just be where we want them. Alright, now we have a nice glittery base. Let's duplicate this layer. Well, let's duplicate the entire group. So I want to make sure that we got everything saved. I'll call it 5. And let me merge these layers. So now we have everything on one layer. And let me duplicate it again in case I mess up this time. Let's go back to the makeup brushes. And this time I want to start out with the wet subtle gloss. It's a wet subtle gloss. Let me drop in this color. Let me grab this light pink. The opacity of this brush is at 60%, and let's make it a bit bigger. maybe 30%. No, a little bit smaller, 22. And let's add that subtle gloss, for instance here at the top of the lip. And also here at the bottom. And it's a bit of a watery brush, so if you don't lift your pen, you can use it to mix a little bit. Also see a lot of gloss here at the top. I'll just go over this area and add some wetness there. And here near those creases, you can see that watery gloss as well. I'm just adding some really subtle wet highlights. Now let me switch to the shiny gloss light. This is way more intense. As you can see, we can use it for very bright, shiny highlights. For instance, I can see a lot here going on at the top. I have the brush set to 10% and the opacity at 65. And let's just add these very, very bright highlights. Those very shiny, wet highlights. And you can combine this with that subtle gloss, the highlighter. For instance, you can switch to the wet subtle gloss, and then go over this area, for instance, and make that softer and more blended. So you have a combination of that very bright gloss, bright highlight, and the more subtle, more faded wet highlights. But this is really, really adding the shine to those lips. So just continue looking at where you see those highlights. Go along that edge here, for instance, and we can make that more subtle with the other brush later. And you really don't have to follow the reference exactly. This is already adding so much. And then switch back to that wet subtle gloss. For instance, just go below here and let that fade so that top edge is pretty sharp, pretty crisp. And you can kind of blend that lower part here as well. You can just go over that edge, make it watery, and blend it. this a bit more wet. We'll add more shimmers there later. Let's add some brighter sparkles. I have this shiny sparkle brush, which is great for that. Let me add it on a new layer though, so we can always paint underneath it. Let's grab a very light color, very light pink. Let me just see. Let me make it even lighter. Go for 22% in size. And let's just add some of these highlights. These very bright sparkles. Way over the top. We can vary the size a little bit. You can even make multiple of these sparkles on top of each other. Something like that. Now let me just add some more sparkles by hand. I'll go back to this layer and let's just go. By the way, these brushes, these are like highlights that are, yeah, you can just use them right away. Making these shiny gloss highlights on your lips. You can move them around. Yeah, I'm not sure what to call it. In Dutch we would say kant en klaar. They are ready to go highlights, so those can be very handy as well. Let me go to the light and line brush now, just to add more sparkles. It's using a very light color. Let's use that yellow again. You know what? I think we can actually, the luminance brush will be nice. Maybe we can use the light pen. Yeah, that's great. I'm using the light pen to add a lot more of these bright sparkles. Sometimes you don't need custom brushes, sometimes Procreate already has it. By hand, you can just go way over the top and add lots of sparkles there. And you can combine it with that sparkly brush that I just showed. Over here we have lots of them as well. And with this, you can just sit back and relax. You don't have to give this too much thought. Let me grab a bright pink. Let me see what happens if I use that here. Yeah, that's nice for those little pink sparkles. Let me go back to the yellow for even more. We want more sparkles around the lower lips. You can also use some of my glitter brushes for more sparkles. Those are great as well. But I was especially happy when creating the gloss brushes. I think they work really well to create that shiny gloss on lips. Also got some really big sparkles. You can go way over the top here. And of course you can continue adding more detail to your lips. Tweaking all these sparkles. I don't want to make this too long. I think we've already been at this for an hour. So of course you can take more time, and if you want to, let's say you want to work on some more creases or some darker details at this stage, then I would suggest using the darken line brush, for instance, and really subtly add little details if it's needed. And you can really experiment with the glittery brushes and the makeup set, but also with the glitter brushes from the glitter set. If you have that, I believe there are also some glitter brushes in the Dropbox, I believe. Not sure which ones. But that can really help making it even more sparkly. So let's say you want to add a little bit more details. You can go to the darken line brush. For instance, grab a local color. Well, let's say you want to work on these creases. You can just go over with the darken line brush. Because that way you won't be touching those glitters too much. You can still refine things. Messing it up a little bit there. So happy tweaking, I'd say. I was just thinking that maybe I can blur the corners of the mouth a little bit more. Let me just duplicate this just one more time. You don't have to do this. Let me merge everything. And I want to use the blur locally. I'll go to Gaussian blur, use it as a pencil. And let me grab the airbrush, make it pretty small, and just blur these corners. And this one as well. Right now it's a little bit too much, but we can make it more subtle. I would say 24%. Make the brush even bigger. Make the blur more subtle. But this way you can create like a depth of field in your image. I think it's really great. Let's get out of there. Now when I look up close, I can still see lots of things that I could tweak. But when I look from a distance, I think this looks pretty glossy and glittery. And like nice lips. So I hope you enjoyed this demonstration on how you can create glossy, glimmery, glittery, shiny lips, and how you can use the makeup brushes to do that. If you have any questions, just be sure to ask me. I'm always there to help. I hope you enjoyed following this video, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.